Welcome back, guys. So now it has been 4 days since every major news network called this election declaring Joe Biden the next president-elect. And it seems the Republicans and the GOP have no plans of stopping their authoritarian takeover. And they're doing it with no shame. Here's an example from a bizarre press conference yesterday. I wasn't surprised, but I was deeply disturbed by what the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, had to say when he was asked if there would be a smooth transition of power from Donald Trump to Joe Biden.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. Right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly.
I mean, you just cannot make this stuff up. These are elected officials tearing up the Constitution and making efforts, failed efforts, I should say, to overthrow democracy and unlawfully declare Trump as the winner without him having hit 270 electoral votes. And for crying out loud, only 3 Republican senators so far have congratulated Joe Biden on his victory. Surprisingly, Susan Collins from Maine, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, and Mitt Romney from Utah.
The eyes of our children are upon us. The eyes of the world are upon us. Every nation in the world is watching what the President of the United States says. And there's a battle going on around the world between authoritarianism and freedom. And it's important for the cause of democracy and freedom that we don't allege fraud and theft and so forth unless there's very clear evidence of that. And at this stage, that evidence hasn't been produced.
It's like we have to congratulate Mitt Romney for standing up for democracy and acknowledging that there was a fair election, which is preposterous because every single politician and government official should have done this the moment it was called. Now, I wasn't the only one pissed off about this. Senator Chuck Schumer was fired up after he heard those blasphemous statements from Pompeo, and here's what he had to say.
Trump's 2 terms. What's your reaction to him?
My reaction to that is look at reality. Secretary Pompeo, Joe Biden has won. He's won the election. Now move on. Let's bring this country together and get things done. We have a COVID crisis raging. We don't have time for these kinds of games.
I love the fire there, but the Democrats have got to get more aggressive and begin to fight against these banana Republicans with more force than they ever have before. Because just yesterday, the GOP was completely exposed after one of their quote-unquote whistleblowers in Erie, Pennsylvania admitted to making up the allegations of ballot tampering. This was a postal worker who was paid $130,000 by GOP donors to make up and sign an affidavit about alleged voter fraud in Pennsylvania. The guy literally took it back. This is a crime within itself from the Republicans, paying someone to attack the integrity of our elections. And now we know that Donald Trump is now 0 for 13 in his legal battles, and the losses are only going to continue to stack up against him because, like I've said in every video, there is 0 evidence of fraud. But that didn't stop Bill Barr from authorizing the Department of Justice prosecutors to pursue quote-unquote substantial allegations of voter fraud, despite the fact that there is no evidence. Now, before you begin to freak out about just how little morality there is left in the government, the head of the DOJ Election Crimes Unit resigned 3 days ago because he knew what they were doing was not only wrong, but it baselessly attacks democracy, poll workers, and the media, and ultimately the very foundations of what makes America such a great country. And of course, when Richard Pilger resigned, Don Jr. was quick to get out and accuse Richard of being a part of the deep state. But not just that, Jr. has been getting more and more angry, being one of the greatest contributors to the conservative propaganda machine, as he demands transparency and fairness into the election that's already been called.
I think the number one thing that Donald Trump can do in this election is fight each and every one of these battles to the death, so that we get full transparency in the process. And everyone on the Democrat side should welcome this unless they're actually cheating. Because if they're winning these things fair and square, then everyone would love to know that, because me as an American, I'd like to know that, because I've lost all faith in the process. So we're going to be watching this nonsense because everyone knows what's going on. Everyone understands it. And the media, who, let's not kid ourselves, have given up the pretense of objectivity to be cheerleaders for the left, they're going to go nuts.
I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, unfortunately, but I don't think anybody takes Junior too seriously. But his attacks on the Republican Party are starting to ring true, because if we think about the fact that only 3 out of 52 Republican senators are willing to accept the results of the election, well, to me, the old school Republican has been officially extinct, because we can see here that the former Republican president, George W. Bush, has gone to congratulate Joe Biden on his victory, stating that it was a fair election and that Biden won soundly. And quite frankly, I don't know what is going to happen to the GOP, whether they'll go back to their conservative, more tame roots of governing, like back in the Bush era, or will they move towards the more radical agenda that Donald Trump was carrying out? Because if they do, I don't think they'll ever win another election again. Clearly, as Donald Trump lost running on that, and surprisingly, even Lindsay Graham would agree with me.
This is a contested election. The media doesn't decide who becomes president. If they did, you would never have a Republican president forever. So we're discounting them. If Republicans don't challenge and change the U.S. election system, there'll never be another Republican president elected again. President Trump should not concede.
Now, Lindsay has a weird way of framing it, but what he really just said was that if all of the votes are counted and we continue to hold fair elections that contain mail-in ballots, then the Democrats will win every single time. And I don't disagree with him. The Democrats expanded their coalition, and Joe Biden statistically is the most popular president to ever be elected. And so long as radical Republicans like Donald Trump, or whether it be Tucker Carlson, Don Jr., or even Ivanka in 2024, they just don't stand a chance of ever retaining power again, which sounds like absolute utopia to me. As evident as the tone in my voice, I am frustrated, disappointed, and ready to fight back against the corrupt GOP, and it's actually in our power to win this fight if we can win both of the Senate runoffs in Georgia in the January election. You guys, we are entering a wild political time, and you know I'm gonna be covering it all, so make sure you subscribe for daily videos, and I will continue to uncover the truth.